When you see the N badge on a Hyundai, you know that it's going to be serious hardware, and this Hyundai IONIQ 5N is certainly very serious. You can already tell by the styling here on the front that this car means business. When you see this coming in your rearview mirror, you know that it's something fast. My name is Peter, welcome to a new video of Autogevoel. I'm going to tell you all about this IONIQ 5N, if it is indeed the everyday sports car that Hyundai claims it is. Here on the front, it certainly has the looks. We start with the typical N color. There are 10 colors available, so you don't have to go for this blue. Personally, I would go for a more dark version. Obviously big beefed up body kit, functional vents here because all that power needs to be cooled. And what I personally really like is this square styling that this one and also the IONIQ 6 has. I really like that sort of retro vibe. I think it looks really cool. When we move on to the side, you can see this wheel arch, this fender extenders with this huge 21-inch wheels inside, 400mm brakes. So again, that immediately screams business. It is not a hot hatch in any way, as we know from the N division. It is really a family SUV. You can maybe tell by the side profile that if you shrink it down, it's certainly a hot hatch, but the size inside, as you'll see later, it's really more SUV kind. 4.70 meters long, about 1.90 meters wide, so it is a big car. And with this body kit, it feels even beefier. Here in the back, you can really see that girth, if you want to say, also with the nice pixelated square rear lights, big diffuser, which I'm not sure is very functional, but this whole gives you a lot of width, and this is something that you're going to see coming past very much. What is functional is these spoilers here, really cool with the integrated brake light. Really nice, gives a little bit extra downforce obviously, although I'm not really sure how functional that really is on a normal road. But it certainly looks cool, and I think it's also a cool integration of the spoiler in general. The big issue with EVs is that it's all very clinical. It's all very powerful, sure, but it doesn't give you the emotions that you get from a combustion engine. There's no vibrations, there's no sounds, there's no gear shifting and all that stuff. It's a common criticism. And Hyundai is of course delivering an N-Sport product with this, and went back to the drawing board and thought, how can we give that feeling back? So there are two buttons here on the steering wheel, your N buttons, that allow you to fully customize your driving experience. So you can put the powertrain in extreme, the steering into light, the differential into cornering, however you want them. So that's really nice. But the big one is the N active sound. Now that might sound a bit tricky, but let's get that together. So if I turn on the sound and the E-shift pedal, you can hear it already. It starts to rumble a little bit. Now you can turn this, the volume up and down the way you prefer, and you can even turn the volume outside on and off. But it now starts behaving like a combustion car. So when I rev it, it sounds like a combustion car. And you see me laugh a little bit because it's of course completely fake. There's no revs here, there's no engine, there's no exhaust, none of that. It's all software and sound. But the implementation is very well judged. So when you're driving, it is actually hitting the rev limiter, which obviously is nonsense because there are no revs, but it is behaving like it's hitting the rev limiter. So there's like acceleration, it hits the rev limiter, and you're not accelerating any further until you pull a gear pedal and you go to the next fake gear. When you do take this car to a track day, or when you do find yourself in Germany on a nice B road, those are the situations where you're going to turn that on, and then it actually works. It is really interesting how engaging it becomes, even though it's fake, and how well it is working together with the drivetrain and the software in order to give you that feel. And it's convincing. It really is convincing. So Hyundai has done an excellent job there in making that work. Sitting here in the front, first things first is of course the bucket seats. The big difference obviously with the normal seats in the normal IONIQ 5. This is Alcantara with leather and with some illuminated logos here in the back. Sort of on longer journeys, after like an hour on the highway, they're not the most comfortable thing in the world. And they're still manually operated. And I think in a car that costs 75,000 euros as it stands here, that is slightly debatable. When I look ahead, it becomes even more a race car for the road. Let me show you the steering wheel. This is of course the business end of the car. Nice and chunky. The main things that stand out obviously are these 4 buttons for adjusting your drivetrain. We got the normal driving mode, so that's Eco, Sport and Normal. We have the boost button, and we have 2 dedicated N buttons. These are very much the same as what Audi has with the RS buttons or BMW with the M buttons. You can go into the menu up here and you can program your N buttons exactly the way you want them. So those are your shortcuts for your performance settings. The steering wheel has quite a lot of buttons, but they are real buttons, so no capacitive nonsense for your volume control, everything for your cruise control and all those things. So exactly what you want and what you expect. Behind the steering wheel we got our light stalk here with indicators and all your light controls, and on the right side we got your wiper settings and everything else. And then here on the button we have the gear lever, so you will, for selecting drive, park and rear. On the left here we have a few buttons for your traction control, you're opening your charging flap and so on, and we have very traditional window and mirror controls, which I like. Quite simple, nothing to see here, nothing to learn here, just the way you want them. The display here, 12 inches, exactly what you imagine it is. It has all your controls, all your apps, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and everything you want. Really works well. Actually, it's a nice system. It's touch only, but it works quite well. And there's quite a few clever features in there. Next to that, we have the driver's display. Again, you can configure that exactly as you want, what you want to see there. So we just got the speedo there right now and some engine temperatures, but you can put your Navi on here, your performance modes and anything you want. And I hope you can see it on camera, but there's also a head-up display with all those things as well. Making our way down the interior, over here you have a bit of a shelf that you can't really use for anything, but it's very handy to put your wrist on when you're operating the screen. Makes it actually quite a lot easier than having to sit here and try to aim for small targets. So that's quite nice. To make that even easier, you got a whole row of function keys here to go to your favorites, go to the car setup right away, go with the volume button, go to your home. So that's actually quite nice that you have these shortcuts and you can go straight to the menu that you want. And then of course you operate the rest in the screen. Below it you have a row of capacitive buttons. I'm not really sure why they've gone for that combination of real buttons versus capacitive, a bit of both. But it's nice that they're always there. They also don't change. So your temperature is here, your fan speed is there. So you know the controls that you use all the time are right there. So that's quite nice. Also that you don't have to, think about that. Oh, do I have to go to the menu? Because Volkswagen, for example, they just have a bigger screen and then they put this row in the screen permanently, which is another way of solving the problem. But it's quite nice to keep this clean and not super big, that you have this row down here. Then we have a big bin here in the middle with your wireless charging, so that fits your phone quite easily. It is rubberized as well, so that it doesn't rattle too much. And things like your keys and your parking clicker will be here as well. Then we have some USB ports here, too. And you can actually select if you want them to be charging or data, or this left one at least, with this button here in the middle. So you can connect to your infotainment system. Some parking camera and distance buttons here, another USB port and a 12-volt socket for the dashcam enthusiasts. Leads us to this big middle bin. This is quite large actually, has a bit of rubber on the bottom, but it's other than that quite plasticky. Even has cup holders that you can click out if you want, that are not really adjustable, but they do have this one thing to sort of keep your bottle in place. But yeah, inevitably this will rattle quite a bit. But it's a big bin that you can just throw everything in that sort of flies around your car usually. So that's quite nice. And then we have a little storage here in the armrest, which is quite plasticky and also doesn't really fit that much. Cleaning cloth maybe. But that's it. And you can even move it slightly for extra elbow support. Since this is a sensible family SUV, we've got to have a look in the rear. And we start with something to pay attention to. If you have a look over here, you can see that the wheel extends quite a bit down, and that's why you got these wheel arch extenders. But that does make the inside of the door disgusting completely the whole time. So as soon as it gets wet outside, that's what you're going to have to deal with, and inevitably you're going to put your pants on there or something. And the same goes for this side skirt here that sticks out quite a bit. And it collects all kinds of grime and road dirt and all that stuff, so you're definitely gonna get your pants dirty. Then looking at the rear seat, I put a child seat in. You can see there's more than enough space for a toddler or a bigger child that needs these seats still. My kids are 10 and 7, so they don't have these big seats anymore. Maybe just the bottom for the younger one. More than enough space, and even when you get teenagers at some point, no issue whatsoever. You can see there's more than enough space to sit behind an adult. I'm 183, so easily fit, and also here with the headroom, no issues whatsoever. The door here, nice soft here for your elbow, slightly harder but still soft touch here on the top. with a little bit of sunshade, and it's all hard plastic here, but not super nasty, I have to say. It's not like a offensively bad kind of plastic, but no lining or anything here, so things will rattle. When I move towards the middle, you don't want to sit here. It's hard, it's not really comfortable. For a short journey, it's fine. I still have a bit of headroom left, but no, you don't really want to sit here. And despite the car being so wide, thanks to the body kit, of course, the internal dimensions haven't increased at all. So sitting here with 3 adults will get quite tight. But if you ignore the middle seat, all is well. Sitting behind myself, also nothing going wrong here, still enough space. There is quite limited space here under the seat. I don't know if you can see that properly on camera, but you can't really put your feet in there very well. I mean, it fits technically speaking, but not really. Last few things, 2 USB charging points here, always handy for all the devices. And then we have the arm support here. Nice that the cup holders are not in the middle, so your elbow disappears in them, but they're here in the front. So nothing crazy, but everything that you want, really. Here in the boot, just under 500 liters of capacity, so not huge. You have some intruding wheel arches here, and you get a little case for your charging cable that is over here. But that's really all there's to it. There's not that much really you can do. There's a few hooks, and there's a 12-volt socket down here. Underneath, there's no double floor. You get a little bit of space for some tools, maybe a water bottle here and there, but that's about it. So boot-wise, it's not all that big, but certainly practical enough. We have an 84 kilowatt-hour battery underneath us, so that's good for the range. Hyundai claims 22 kilowatt-hours per 100 on average, which is not the most efficient thing in the world, but with that much battery capacity, you're looking at around 400 kilometers in the real world. I have to say, once you start using the performance that's available, obviously that plummets down to numbers that you don't even want to talk about. But if you drive normally, then you can definitely see mid-20s in terms of consumption. So that's, all very reasonable. But then again, you're not buying this car to be reasonable all the time. So we have 2 electric motors. We have 610 horsepower in normal driving mode, and with this red button, which is the overboost button, but they call it the N-Grin button, I kid you not, you get the full 650 horsepower and 770 newton meters of torque. So once you leave the build-up area and you have a little bit more space, you can explore that performance a bit. With 650 horsepower on tap, you better be awake, because you are basically the fastest car on the road, bar some very exotic Ferraris, and maybe a Turbo S. Porsche can somewhat keep up with this, but you're so much faster than everybody else on the road that it is something that you have to pay close attention to. And it's not so much like you feel insecure in here or that you feel out of control in any way, shape or form, but it's the speed difference and of course the acceleration difference between you and the rest of traffic is just so big that you have to really anticipate on when and where you deploy that power. Even above 200 kilometers an hour, when you put your foot down or when you hit the boost button, it still pulls and pulls and pulls. So it's very impressive what you can do with this drivetrain. And even at those speeds, because of the weight, because of the suspension, it still feels stable and sort of in control of your vehicle. So that's great too. I have to say, at speeds above 200, and especially when you fully start exploring the power and the boost button, your range will of course plummet to numbers that you don't even want to mention. So forget any kind of range once you start doing that, and especially when you're doing any high-speed driving, of course, the Achilles heel of EVs in general. But then you're seeing numbers closer to 50 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So that's not good for your range, obviously. But even here in the Netherlands, you grab your occasional gap or an exit or a highway ramp. It's just the ability to cover ground and the ability to accelerate so fast. It just makes you smile the whole time. You barely even need the grin button for extra grinning. It's just something, it's just so much performance available that you'll almost never find yourself fully pressing your foot down for longer than 2 or 3 seconds, because it just goes so fast so quickly. So it's very impressive what Hyundai has done with this car, transforming this into a race car when you want to, but keeping it a family SUV when you don't. That is, I think, the core of the story with this car. It is everything you could want in a car and then some. The gimmicks inside with the sound and the shifting and everything, it's not for me personally. I think it is, there's a time and a place for it, and I think that time and place does not really exist in day-to-day life, and certainly not here in the Netherlands. If you can take this car to a track, if you have the option to do that, if you live in an area where there's nice roads, maybe with some hairpins and some stuff, yes, I can see that it adds something to the experience. If this is the future of what EV driving or what N-badge driving will be, I think it's going to be a bright future. If they refine this even further, I think it's going to be very exciting. Overall, I think this car is worthy of the N-badge. Hyundai has done a great job in making it an N car. I think if you want it to be, it's crazy. If you don't want it to be, it is a family SUV that is smart and sensible. And overall, I think this is a very desirable car to have.